6 years ago today, a gunman murdered 9 black parishioners during a Bible study class at Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. The shooter was a 21-year-old white supremacist, claiming he wanted to start a race war. Reverend and South Carolina State Senator Clementa Pinckney was one of the people killed in the mass shooting. CBS News contributor Antjuan Seawright spoke to the Pinckney family about that night and the impact it still has 6 years later.
6 years ago, 16 roughly, a white supremacist by the name of Dylan Roof walked into the church where the Bible study was happening. You were there that night. Walk us through that night from your own perspective, because it's one thing to read about it, it's one thing to hear about it, it's another thing to feel it from someone who was there.
I believe like that day started like any other day. You know, any other time you wake up, you go about your daily activities and so forth. And you know, Clemente had to be at the church for a meeting and then Bible study. Clemente and I and Milana, we hopped in the car and we drove to Charleston like nothing to it. We went to church and they had the meeting. They started off with a meeting first, and so Milana and I, we stayed in the pastor study. After about an hour or so of my doing my work, and Milana would come get a little snack, and she would go back and sit down and watch TV, is when I heard the first gunshots. And at first, I thought it was maybe a generator going off or something of that nature. And I jumped up. Milana kind of looked at me, still never really said anything. She looked at me and I ran to the door, and I was just about to, I actually opened the door just slightly, and then it hit me like, it's not like a generator or anything, those are gunshots. And in my mind, I was thinking, who in the world would be shooting, you know? And I quietly closed the door and I locked it, and adrenaline started pumping and running and so forth, and I ran through the office and I snatched her, almost like she was a rag doll. I snatched her up so fast, and I went into the secretary's office, which is adjacent, and shoved her under the desk. I didn't know what was going on, but I told her to stay under that desk no matter what happened. You know, I love you, tell your sister I love her, tell grandma I love her, but I don't care what happened, you stay under this desk. And I was whispering this to her. As soon as I hear the gunshots at a distance was when I was gonna make a run for it and pull the door behind me so that it would lock. And that was my plan. But apparently that wasn't God's plan or anything else, because next thing you know, bullets came flying through the office, and it felt like it was right beside me, of course. And I leaped under the desk with Milana, and so we just sat under the desk with our hands over each other's mouths and so forth. And then, you know, I heard Ruth say that he had to do this, and he walked out the door. And then I started hearing the first responders coming. The first person they got to was the person that was outside of the office door. And I heard them say that, hey, here's one, this person, hey, he's still alive. So for a quick thought, I was just thinking, it could be Clemente, it could be Clemente. And they kept saying, hey, stay with us. And they just kept saying that, stay with us, stay with us. And they got him out of there. And so then I heard more responders, first responders were coming in, and then I heard them say, hey, bring in a body bag. And then I heard them say, bring in several body bags. And so we were still under the desk. At this point in time, I'm like, hey, you know, the first responders are here, we should be able to leave. And they were like, do not leave, do not get from under this desk. Well, of course, I realized later, you know, if I would have just walked out there, they probably would have shot us, because they wouldn't have known. But we stayed, and then I guess they eventually told the first responders there's 2 people in that office. When they walked in, they had guns drawn, they had the flashlights pointing, and so of course they put everything down there. I heard them say, we've got them. And Milana and I got from under the desk, and the officer told Milana that we're going to play a little game, and they were like, I'm going to pick you up, and I want you to put your head right into my shoulder, close your eyes as tight as you can, and we're going to go for a little run. And so she did exactly what they told her to do, and once she put her head down and closed her eyes, put her head down, they ran up out of there as fast as they could. So Milana, she didn't see anything. And of course, when it was time for me to walk out, there was pools of blood, ceiling, walls, floor. It was a sight I'll never forget for the rest of my life.
You are a strong, resilient woman.
Thank you.
And you are a hero. Tell us, what do you feel now?
Now looking back at it, I feel like really grateful that I came, because at first I was gonna stay home with my sister, but now looking back at it, I'm glad that I actually went, because I know my mom has told other people, if I wasn't there, she would have been in there with them and she would have been dead right now. So I'm really grateful that I went.
I've spoken to several people, and while a lot of things may have changed, unfortunately, some things have remained the same, and in some cases have gotten worse in this environment. We see events happening all across the country almost weekly now, or daily now. What does that say from your perspective about where we are, where we need to be, and where we essentially have to go if we want this country to be better?
It has made me see a lot of hate. There's just so much hate. There's just so much dislike. And I'm like, we all have to get along. We all get up, we all put our pants on one leg at a time, our blood is all red, and so forth. And so we need to learn to accept each other's differences. I mean, we don't want everyone to be alike, to look alike, to act alike. We learn from others. And so, I've just seen the number of mass shootings, just the number of shootings and killings overall. And it's unbelievable. And so it's like a lot of people to me, they don't want change, but a bullet has no color, a bullet has, no name and so forth. So you just never know. It could wind up being a family member of yours. It's like, a coworker of mine, we were talking, and it's like, well, you're not safe at church. And then we just kept going on. Well, you're not safe at a concert. You're not safe in a movie theater. You're not safe at Walmart. And it's just like, you're not safe at school. And it's just like the list just kept growing and growing and growing. And it's just like, when is it going to end?
Have you been frustrated by the lack of change between now and 6 years ago? And what changes you hope to see in your lifetime from 6 years ago to now to wherever you may end up?
I have most definitely been frustrated by the lack of change, but I think I'm very hopeful based off of the fact that I grew up in a generation that the beginning of our generation was born at 9/11. And through our lifetime, we have lived through 9/11. We've lived through school shootings. We've lived through the Emanuel 9. We've lived through Orlando shootings. We've lived through Walmart shootings. We see all of this happening in real time in every state. Everybody knows somebody. And if you don't know somebody, you pull out your phone and you see it happening. And I have so much hope that by the time my generation, now we're starting to vote. Half of my friends are able to vote this year. So we are literally in charge of changing our future. So over the last 6 years, no, there hasn't been as much change as I would like to see, but maybe that's because the people who are in charge of making change are just now becoming in control of our own future and in control of our own lives.
Alana, how does it make you feel knowing that your father was literally a spark plug of change in this country?
It's just been life-changing. I've had so many opportunities, doors opened. I've had so many amazing things happen to me just because of this. So I'm not thankful. I do give my gratitude, because without this, I don't know where I would be today. And I'm just really thankful for that part.
When the ink dries on the pages of history about this first little rough draft of history called the American Experiment, what do you hope the world will remember you by?
I hope to be remembered as the the daughter of Clementa Pinckney, who carried on his legacy but amplified it by 100. I want to do what he was doing for South Carolina across the entire country, and I want to make change through social justice, through politics, through education, through the arts. Just I want to do it all, and I want to do it well. And I want to make sure that change happens before I lay down in my grave.
You will be the glue that hold a lot of people together in this country for a very long time. What do you hope the world remembers about what happened 8:16 p.m. 6 years ago at Emanuel?
What do I hope the world will remember about that day? That's to remember just people coming together, preaching, teaching, learning about God, the importance of unity and coming together.